12 years of marriage finally resulted in giving birth to a son. I remember how happy I was to see him squealing so energetically. Then my exhaustion flew away. A few hours after the birth of my son, my husband and mother-in-law came to my room.
We saw the baby. He's so cute, just like Mark.
Good job. Our baby is a boy.
They looked content. When I told them about my pregnancy, they were indifferent at first. But seeing their cheerful faces, it was clear that their own child or grandchild was adorable. I hoped that we might be able to heydays, like in the past.
So we're getting a divorce.
My husband initiated the divorce as if it were a casual conversation. It was followed by my mother-in-law.
We 11 take the air.
She said it with a smile on her face, not changing her demeanor.
You're no longer needed. I've taken care of you for over don't complain now.
It's way too late to have the furs after 12 years of marriage. He should switch to a younger girl, bear more children.
I don't want to waste any more time, so I divorced me right away.
Okay, then Ion'll destroy your home and company.
My name is Sally. I'm a 34-year-old housewife. My husband, Mark, and I met at university. When we were students, we were an org couple. I thought he was just like me from an ordinary family. But after we got engaged, I learned that my grandfather was a wealthy man who owned several companies. Moreover, they were so big that ever about them. I was anxious about my marriage, thinking it was too much to be someone from such a family. But Mark said,
It's no different from any other family business, except that my grandfather is a business owner.
He was a kind guy who always considered others before himself. So I thought I could work things out and decided to marry him. After marriage, Mark and my mother Helen wanted me to live on their property in the country. I am a full-time housewife and I love it. Mark got a job at an ordinary insurance company, but life was mostly normal for us, except that I struggled to learn table manners. When I had to go to a high-class restaurant for family gatherings, around the 3rd year of our marriage, we decided to start a family. Helen, who had always left us couples, started interfering.
It's already been 3 years, but no baby yet. Mrs. Miller's daughter just got pregnant. I wonder when I can meet my grandchild.
She came over early in the morning, to have a baby every day. I spoke to Mark about this.
She's been lonely ever since her dad away. We'll have a kid someday, so don't take seriously.
He told me to be patient. I should have retorted back at her or told Mark to ask her to stop, but I felt so bad about not being able to have a baby myself that I couldn't come on strong. Many years had passed, but still not. Meanwhile, her desire to have a baby grew stronger. Not only that, but she started harassing me about my chores, criticizing my cooking and throwing away, and ordered me to finish mowing the lawn within an hour. I once told Mark that I was tired of attacks from his mother, and he wanted him to do something about it.
Deal with it yourself. I'm tired. Bother me with such a trivial matter.
He interrupted me and scolded me with a harsh tone. Around this time, he was busy establishing a company affiliated with his grandfather's business and was to become the president. He was coming home late at night from work, not only to work, but also to socialize. And when I tried to talk to him, most of the time, he was too exhausted to listen to me. The numbers of occasions we spoke to each other became less and less, and our relationship as a married couple is diminishing. Even so, I thought that if Mark S. Dukesy settled down and we had a child, it would be easier to cope with the situation. We could go back to the days when Was 6 closed. So I started infertility treatment. During the treatment, I often felt like I couldn't do what I wanted. I was also anxious that I didn't want to have a child. It was mentally and physically exhausting. But I somehow managed to hang on, a happy life for our family. As a result, we were finally able to have a child after 12 years of marriage. When the doctor told me I was pregnant, I wanted to jump up and down for joy. I called Mark right away.
Are you busy? Sorry to bother you. I just saw the doctor and I'm pregnant.
Good. I'm busy right now, so I go.
His reaction was so cold that my heart disappeared. When I told Helen,
Finally, I thought I wasn't going grandchild.
there were no words of joy or no congratulation, but only the reaction I didn't expect was quite disappointing. Even after the news, Helen didn't stop harassing me, but continued ordering me to clean, editing the following for spelling and grammar mistakes, and stealing the meal I prepared, which added more burden on my shoulder. Mark was still coming home late and have time to talk. My feelings started wavering around time.
Should I get a divorce? But we might reconcile after the ball is over.
A half year later, I gave birth to I would love to have Mark with, but I told myself that he was too busy to come. He and Helen came to visit me a few later. I was surprised to see them both as they never said they were coming, but I didn't say anything, thinking it was better to rush in and celebrate the big win.
We saw the baby. He's so cute, just like Mark.
Good job. Our baby is a boy.
When I told them about my pregnancy, I was worried about their indifference, but seeing their cheerful faces, it was clear that their own child or grandchild was adorable. Mark initiated the divorce in a casual conversation. It was followed by Helen.
We'll take the air.
I just gave birth to your son and talking about a divorce.
That's why you're no longer needed. I've taken care of you for over don't complain now.
It's way too late to have the furs after 12 years of marriage. I can't expect to have more grandchildren than someone over 30, like you. He should switch to a prettier and girl who can bear more children. 1.
My mouth was agape at such a shock. They thought I was incapable of backing up my claims. They continued with their selfish
I guess you'll be struggling to make new friends after being a housewife for over 5 years. I'll be lenient with the child support.
You can thank us for raising he's a precious heir.
When they finished talking, they left the room with satisfied looks on their faces. All I could think about was how to regret his decision in my quiet house room. Not once did I consider avoiding which convinced me that my love for him was gone. After my mind was made up, I called my parents and asked them up upon my discharge. I assumed my son would be taken away if I returned home. I didn't want to worry my parents unnecessarily, so I simply informed them that I was a divorce. I sent a text to Mark and Helen and I was going to stay with my parents while Helen replied with complaints, but Mark simply wrote back, okay. I wasn't sure if he thought it would be too difficult to take care of an infant, but I was relieved that he didn't owe. Although I was wary, they never came hospital or my parents' house again. While my mother was taken care of, I decided to call my grandfather in retaliation against Mark. I knew it was brazen of me to rely on a stranger's kindness, but I had no other choice but to weaken Mark and Helen's position within the extended family. I decided it necessary to get me a lawyer. It was my very first time calling, so I was anxious while the phone was. When he answered my call, I told him what happened during my pregnancy. What I had been told by them was that I had given birth. I also forwarded the nasty messages I received from Helen, and hinted to him that Mark probably had a mistress. From the way she mentioned switch younger girl, he couldn't make a decision based or alone, so he was going to investigate and me back on another day. I received a call from him a week later. From his investigation, we found that he had been cheating on me for 3 years. Helen had been telling people that she was going to be a teacher, that I had run away, and she was raising her grandson. My grandfather-in-law sounded stoic, but I could feel his quiet rage vibrating through the phone. To gather more evidence of adultery, a private detective to tail Mark, and my grandfather-in-law, a seasoned lawyer. Then more and more evidence of infiltration came out. His mistress was a gentle-looking girl in her early 20s. There were pictures of Mark in his apartment, of him happily arm in arm with her, and of them going into our house together. There was a picture of the girl that my mother-in-law had taken. So she must have known about the aff. I was ready to retaliate. When my health was back to normal, May decided to discuss our divorce. We met in the meeting room at his seat. Mark and Helen were already seated, showed up with my lawyer.
Where's my grandson? You never let me see him since his...
Helen grimaced at me.
He's with my parents.
You're too clumsy and not the best raising a child, so give him to me.
You hide in your parent's house and lawyer with you. I was going to let you go without child support and alimony. But if you're willing to fight, I'll be through too.
What do you mean by alimony?
I'm going to take over my grandfather's company one day. And yet, I took care of a childless over a decade, so it wouldn't be worth it if I did pay alimony.
Mark sneered, and my lawyer looked at him coldly.
I wonder which one of us would end alimony.
Look who's talking.
Helen, let me check again. I'm having a hard time having kids, not getting any younger. So you want Mark to marry a younger...
Right. You're not so right. You may not know what kind of family you married into, but they will always be your family. We need a healthy, obedient child bride.
Do you agree with her, Mark?
Sure. I don't want to waste any more of your time. Let's divorce as fast as we can.
Both of them said exactly what I wore to say, which made me grin.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Now, I'm going to destroy you and your company.
Huh?
They rolled their eyes at each other and then burst out in laughter.
Who do you think you are to do such a thing?
His company is affiliated with his grandfather. You were born and raised in a poor... There's no way you could do that.
They continued to mock me for a while.
Well, let's have a look at these
I presented them with dozens of pictures on the table. Both of them immediately shut up and became serious when they saw that.
So, what have they got to do with... You may be mistaken. This woman is from the university. I was just being consulted about my career.
I see. Then how about these?
I pulled out a voice recorder and played the conversations between his mistress about their non-existent married life. Both Mark and Helen turned pale when they heard the recording.
What the hell is this? I got nothing with it.
I hid a voice recorder in the house while you two were gone a few days ago. By the way, I bought it to get even with Helen's harassment.
I expected Mark to deny everything showed him the pictures, so I installed a voice recorder too. They couldn't get away with it.
But we have been separated since you went to your parents' house. So, our marriage has been broken.
We haven't been separated. I just home after the baby was born. In any case, I know you've been seeing me for 3 years. I have proof.
That's a lie. Show me if you do.
I met up with your mistress.
I asked her to meet me since I had an impression that she might not know he was married. After hearing the recorded conversation, the judge ordered that the case be dismissed. was right. She was aghast and on the verge of, she found out. She led me to read the correspondence between Mark and her.
I'm lonely right after a divorce. Will you accept me even though I'm a divorcee?
There were several messages about his single. I had taken pictures of those as pro-affair. He was speechless after I showed them.
It's disgusting that you not only on me, editing, but also deceiving her by not telling the truth. I wonder what the people at work would say if they knew about this.
You think you're threatening me with a knife? How could a company go out of business over something as trivial as cheating?
Right. So it's okay that he has been listening.
I showed him a screen of my phone, which had been on the line with my grandfather-in-law. Mark and Helen suddenly looked agitated and couldn't say anything other than wait.
He is too busy to join us here, but he was concerned about me, so he listened over the phone. He also helped me to get the evidence of adultery.
As soon as Mark heard me, he fell to the floor.
I am very sorry. This is just a small marital dispute.
When he started excusing himself, his grandfather scolded him. A man who fails to protect the woman he promised to been capable of running a country. He said he was going to discipline and hang up the phone. Mark was still on the floor, frozen statue. Helen was pale as a ghost.
Now, you know you can't get away with that. So, let's discuss child support and...
I was content to see the despair on Helen's faces, so I was going to let my lawyer take and wrap up the negotiation quickly.
Let's not get divorced after all. The child should be with a birth mother.
Drenched in his cold sweat, he suggested a quivering smile. I laughed at his awkward expression.
You're right.
His face immediately turned into a broad smile.
My son needs a mother, but he doesn't need a father like you.
Let me say it from me this time. You're no longer needed, so please do me a favor. Showing the despair on his face, he hid with both hands. My lawyer and I ignored him and continued our discussion. It didn't reach an agreement on that. Mark also hired a lawyer. As a result, I was granted alimony I wished. The only reason I got what I wanted there was no property division. Mark was earning a good amount of money. But when he was put in charge of he became carefree and started buying expensive suits and watches from renowned brands. I asked once if he was saving, and he said, now is the time to spend, splurge. I suspected that he wasn't saving, and just as I thought, his account balance was only a few $100s. As there were no savings, Mark and Helen had cashed in numerous brand name items to pay alimony, but it still wasn't enough and ended up selling their house. They moved into a small apartment, starting their new lives. His company lost affiliation with a grandfather, and the companies he was dealing with went bankrupt. The employees who lost their jobs were hired by his grandfather. He managed to find a new job, but his salary became half of what he used to make. It was impossible to make a proper. Helen, who had been a housewife, worked a part-time job. The two incomes should have made it possible for them to live comfortably, but Mark needed to pay child support. Both of them couldn't downgrade their lifestyle. The amount of debt keeps increasing. I heard Helen ask for help from her relatives. They didn't even decline, but ignored her completely. My recording of her harassment, that was passed around among them, and they all took some of it, but not one of them tasted it. It's been a year since the divorce. Mark has never asked to see his son. I wonder if he wants to, but he can't pay his phone bill, that there's no way for him to get with me. Either way, my son and I are enjoying a peaceful life without having to deal with him. I can't imagine raising my son without them. I'm grateful now that Mark initiated a divorce.